And welcome to part three, the final chapter of our little video about the popularity of Power Rangers. And basically, we're going to talk about Power Rangers in space. And as we had said before, ratings declined in Turbo, came up during Power Rangers in Space, and renewed the show for where it is now, basically. So the question I have to you, Raptor, is why do you think Power Rangers in Space did so well? It never reached the same heights as Mighty Morphin. Let's be clear about that. It was no longer a worldwide phenomenon. It started to become this, I wouldn't even say cult, but more of an underground thing. Because again, it wasn't in pop culture as much. A lot of other shows were starting to take over, and of course, this was the era of boy bands and Britney Spears, and that was more of what people were getting into at that time.
Yes, but we will say, yes, there was a rating spike because it saved the show from cancellation.
Yes, I just want to know what that is because I can sit here and say they had great stories and they were very creative in that season for what they have. I would say the Power Rangers in Space and Power Rangers Lost Galaxy are the two most creative shows in what they did with the original footage and how good they were able to make the shows in the end.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there.
Yeah. So that being said, was it the creativity and the storyline? Was it the characters? Because we got all new cast basically. We got rid of Justin. We barely got to know the other Turbo teens by this point. They were only in maybe 20 episodes or less at the time that Turbo ended. So we had all new characters, a brand new situation. Everything was new. There were really no links to the past, with the exception of going to Angel Grove High School in the first half and Alpha 6, which is not even really Alpha 6 anymore with the change. So what would account for the popularity if it was nothing like Mighty Morphin?
Okay, so let's go back to what we said in the previous part about escalation.
Yes.
This felt like the escalation that that Zeo
was building to.
Exactly. And other than the new cast, you could almost skip. You could almost go straight from Zeo to space.
Pretty much because there's very little plots in there, with the exception of the Millennium Message, but that's a whole different thing for another time.
Right. And so it felt like the show was building up again. It was building to something. So that was something exciting for viewers to look forward to each week.
Yeah, because it was always a new planet, a new situation, and you really didn't know what was going to come because as much as Zeo was good and Turbo was bad, there was still a formula that they were following. But Power Rangers in Space, they still had the fight the foot soldiers, fight the giant monster and the robots.
But there was a lot of other things happening.
They put so many different elements in there. It seriously was Star Trek meets Power Rangers, and Star Trek in like Captain Kirk, use your fists first before diplomacy, or cowboy diplomacy from Reunification.
Yes. So, and also I know in the last one we mentioned that the new elements felt strange.
Yeah, because again, you're getting bigger, then you get small, and suddenly ramped right back up.
But a lot of the new elements that people complained about in Turbo, part of the thing about the new elements is that it was all these new things, but it was being pigeonholed into the old formula.
Yeah, because they got rid of Zora and Alpha. For what reason? I don't know. I've never heard an explanation for it. And so they give us a replacement, Alpha 6, who nobody liked because of his jive talk.
Who filled the exact same character role.
Same role. The personality was different, but not in a good way.
But story-wise, he did the same thing.
And then Demetria, oh my goodness, only asking questions. I'm glad she got out. It's lazy writing that they stopped doing that, but I'm so glad for lazy writing at that point.
Right, but she did the same stuff Zordon would do.
Exactly, so it makes you wonder.
She would say, hey guys, shit's going on, or is something happening?
Yeah, and I've had so many ideas of what you could have done with that, but we're not here to talk about rewriting the series. It's just that what they were doing, and this is much like what Megaforce is doing now, is that they're taking familiar elements but transplanting them with something that's the exact same thing, just in a different package. So instead of Zordon, you got Demetria. Instead of Alpha 5, you get Alpha 6.
And it feels like a watered-down ripoff at that point.
And that would explain the Turbo changes, But what would you say? I mean, because like space got so far away from what Power Rangers originally was, but we all liked it. There was no mentor. There was nobody telling them what to do, and they
Okay,
had
yeah.
to
So,
they had to do all this on their own, which was great.
all right. So it's not so much that things had changed when you went into space;
Hmm.
that things had evolved.
Good point.
Things weren't being replaced. You weren't shuffling out a lot of the old characters. Yeah, you shuffled out Justin, but no one was missing him.
I'm going to go on your train of evolution real quick because I would say the first 4 seasons were like a Squirtle, Turbo was like a War Turtle, and then Space became Blastoise.
I would say that Zeo was the War Turtle, and then and then Turbo was one of those knockoffs of Pokemon toys that you get at the flea market.
Well, what I'm talking about is like it's the middle one. Like you don't really like it. You like the original pre-evolution, and you like the third stage. Nobody really likes the second stage.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Well, I mean, we need to go ahead and close this up.
No, we still.
Are we still good on? Okay, good.
I've been keeping the eye on the timer. Don't worry.
Yeah,
folks.
I hate this 15-minute limit. I'm sorry, folks. But
Yeah.
ultimately, what one element do you think we can point to Power Rangers in Space's credit?
Progression.
That's what saved the series.
Yes, it's that all the stuff that had been building to was delivered, and it was progressing in creativity. It was progressing in storytelling. It was progressing in just lost my train of thought. But
I know what you mean. I mean, it seems like it was getting better every week, and of course, it ended with the greatest finale in any Power Ranger season that we've had.
Mhm.
I mean, I can't think of a better finale.
So yeah, to sum it up, why the changes of Space worked better than the changes of Turbo. Turbo replaced Space evolved.
And ultimately, looking at the 6 years of Power Rangers in those first 6 years, what can you ultimately say? I mean, what would your overall thoughts be of how everything basically changed, and from where we started in Data Dumpster to where we ended in Countdown to Destruction? Was it all for the best, or did we lose something in there for sake of keeping the identity or changing things, so we had to get rid of actors or any of those elements?
Well, I think there was a lot of potential lost in the insistence on keeping the Zoo suits for 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if the suits would have changed maybe midway through season 2, that could have been easier
or
to
even
accept.
season 3, I would have accepted that more.
Yes. So I think something was lost there. I think you gained a little by the suit and Zord changes into Zeo. It was something new. It evolved. The audience was growing older, and so the show changed.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm thinking it was acting more mature or anything, but
there were better stories as it went along.
yes,
Because Power Rangers really had a hard time finding a foothold of what it wanted to be when it first started.
yes,
And it found its way towards the end of season 1, but by the time it did that, by the time it really had a standard status quo, it started changing rapidly, and I think to its disadvantage in a lot of places. I mean, the Zords, those were fine. I had no problems with those. Introduction of new characters like Ninjor, new villains like Lord Zed, those all worked to the benefit. But when you start getting rid of the elements that people liked, then that's when we started running into a problem.
yes. So, and then when you entered the lower quality stuff of the Turbo era, that's when the repetitiveness of the show would wear on people.
Absolutely, because I will say Turbo was very repetitive. I mean, there were some good arcs in there. I'm not saying Turbo's completely horrible. It had some good ideas, but just couldn't capitalize on any of them.
And Space was still using, as you said, Space was still using fight the foot soldiers. More fight a monster, then call out the mechs when the monster gets enlarged.
Yeah.
But it was throwing out new ideas to break the monotony. Turbo just reminded you of the monotony. And I would say parts of season 3 reminded you of the monotony. it broke the. When you're throwing new ideas at people, you keep them within the, to use a film term here, the mise en scène.
Mm-hmm.
You're keeping them engrossed in the world. If you're not throwing new ideas at them, the viewers become aware of the flaws. You were saying about Star Trek First Contact before we recorded earlier.
Yeah.
You said there are several problems with it, but that the whole was just so good that you overlooked them.
Yeah, I mean, that's true of any story. I mean, look at Citizen Kane, the biggest plot hole in film history, and yet everybody loves that movie because the rest of it overshadowed its one plot hole.
Yes, and that's what Space was doing that Turbo failed at.
Yes, and I will agree with that because there were some plot holes in Space, but they were not as egregious, and Cassie kept coming back for more, or at least in my mind.
I know.
Well, Raptor, are we out of time?
We still have some, but I don't know.
I think we keep getting off topic, and I hate being constricted like this, but again, we probably ramble on until whenever, who knows. But guys, I think we're pretty good. I think we went over enough things. But you know what? If we missed anything, if there's anything else you'd like us to go ahead and talk about or mention,
or if you have a different interpretation of the decline,
yeah, just let us know in the comments section. And Raptor, any parting thoughts today?
My only parting thought is, man, I actually would have liked to see Justin in the second in Super Mega Force.
I would have liked to see him in RPM redeeming himself as a Red Ranger.
Yeah, I would have liked to see him show up in Super Mega Force, all grown up and shit.
Become a real badass. That's the main wish of everybody. But that's something of a different time. So I want to thank you guys for listening tonight to these various videos that we have. We'll keep them up as soon as finals week is over. But you guys have a good day, and the tavern is now closed.